We have a roll call of members that are online. We got Marla.
I'm here, Marla.
Okay, yeah, and Bill Rowinski.
Yep, Bill Rowinski.
And
Stuart Beasley.
Stuart Beasley is on. Okay, good. And
Victor Peabody.
Victor, okay, Victor's on. Good, okay. All right, is that it? Okay. Very good. Okay. So, action on the minutes of the previous meeting, May 4th. I was not present, but those of you who were, do you have any comments, questions, edits?
All
I
abouts
don't.
none.
This is Bill. I have edits.
Okay, Bill, what do you got?
Pending application in section A that says commission in 2 places. It should be agency.
The agency members, okay, yeah.
Agency members in the second paragraph.
All agency members, okay.
That's it for corrections.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much to Cindy for all the work she did on that and filling in some of the blanks. She did an excellent job.
Thank you, Bill.
Yay, we love Cindy.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
Marla
I will
Butt speaking. I move to accept the minutes of
Second.
May 4th, 2020.
Okay. Motion's been made to accept the minutes as corrected by Marla Butt, seconded by Bill Rowinski. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, good. The ayes have it. Very good. Okay. Pending applications. We have application 03-20-03, NW Swadia LLC, DBA North Woodstock Country Store. Proposed automobile service station. So do we have any more questions, comments?
I have a question. This is Bill.
Okay, Bill?
On the retention basin on sheet C2.2, is there a volume for that?
This is Callisto Burton. I'm the engineer for the application. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just checking the drainage calculations. We usually do a routing method. I'm sure, yeah, storage. Well, our peak storage is 11,000 cubic feet, 11,274 cubic feet.
Okay, what was that? How does that relate to the different storm frequencies?
Well, we have run the 2, 10, 25-year, 50 and 100-year storms through it. And let me just see what so that we don't increase the rate of runoff for any of the storms. Just want to check here. So the biggest storm is the 100-year storm. Okay, it's combined. So we maintain the rate, so that 11,000 cubic feet would be to maintain the 100-year storm volume. I mean, we don't maintain the whole storm volume. We do not allow the runoff to increase. So we have both the detention basin. Yes, no, I'm sorry. It's all in the detention basin.
Okay, now that, on that,
Yeah.
just Bill again, on that sheet and C 2.1, you list the upland review area, 100-foot upland review area,
Yes,
in the upper left hand.
yes.
What feature is that in relation to?
That's in relation to the edge of the wetlands.
The wetlands or brook or pond or,
No, it's okay. On the sheet, we show a wetlands and then about another, that's 100 feet. Then about, say 70 feet beyond that is a stream, an intermittent stream.
okay. So that you're primarily showing the stream?
We show the stream, both the stream and the wetlands flags were picked up by our surveyor.
Okay. Is the stream you're talking about at the top of the page?
Yes,
Okay, because I know on the lot next door, there's a pond and a brook that feeds that stream.
yeah, well, this is, I'm, yes, the stream leads to that pond on the neighbor's property.
Okay, so is that 100-foot from the stream or from other wetlands?
It's from the wetlands, and the wetlands are about 75 feet thereabouts from the stream. So our line is 175 feet or so from the stream.
Okay, that clarifies it.
Okay.
Thank you. I have no further questions right now.
If I just could add, since we're here, last time we were switching project managers, so I didn't have, the wetlands were delineated by Joseph Thoreau, and I don't know if he's familiar with you, but I submitted the letter that he provided.
Yes, I emailed it out to everyone.
Okay, and I apologize for submitting it late, but he did the delineation.
Did everyone get that in their email today?
I did.
All right.
I got the email. I'm
That would
not
have
sure.
been today, okay. I did not get that in my email. I've got the revised drainage report and the first some document that's a site plan as it currently exists. I don't see Joe Thoreau's letter.
Okay, hold
Yeah,
on.
I don't think I have it either.
Yeah, I didn't see it myself. This is Bill.
I'm also looking for the drawings, but that probably is from last month.
Hmm.
Dana sent out a set of drawings on the 28th. And this is Marla Butt speaking. I did not have a chance to review those to see whether or not all the questions that I asked for in my document about the plans, whether or not that's all been fixed or not. So does Joe Thoreau's letter have a general description of the wetlands as to its vegetation and functions?
Yes.
Sending to you
Mr.
right now.
Burren?
Okay. Yeah, just say.
Maybe if it'll save time, Marla Butt speaking, maybe if it'll save time, since we've only gotten these set of plans, 2 days ago, 3 days ago? I haven't had a chance to review them or the drainage report in relation to the questions that I had asked. So I'm not prepared to take any action on this application until I have a chance to review the documents and give some feedback, which I would give to Tina, and then she could decide if she, if other comments that came in, collect them together and forward them to the applicant for his response. This is a complicated project, so it needs careful scrutiny and looking at, and I don't want to rush it.
I understand. This is Callisto Burton again. We had we were waiting for comments from the planning board to incorporate with these, with your comments. I'm not going to go through them all. We've addressed them, and that's why the late submission. I just thought I'd mention a few things so you don't have to interpret them. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the drainage if I could. Is it all right if I just explain the system? And it relates to the fueling operation. So the underground storage tank system includes the tanks, the piping, and the dispensers. Right, so all the system that we propose really exceeds state and federal regulations. The first regulations came out, the federal regulations came out like in 1990 or something like that, and all tanks, it was actually 1988, all tanks had to comply by 1998. And at the time, the technology was just advanced so far, and not only the industry, when they realized the cost of spills and the environmental sensitivity of spills, the industry caught up and actually exceeded the regulations by implementing new systems. For example, they did not require, the regulations did not require spill containment sumps underneath the dispensers. Well, the industry's been doing that for 15 years, but it wasn't until 2012 that Connecticut caught up and said they shall be underneath the dispensers. So what I'm saying is that the industry has advanced beyond the regulations. And I'll just explain it briefly. So all the tanks and piping are double wall. So that if water gets, and then there's monitoring, that's my dog, sorry. So if there's any fluid or change in fluid in that interstitial space, in the pipes or the tank, there's a detection system that'll catch it. So if water were to get into the interstitial space around the tanks, well, then we know that there's a leak from the outer wall into the interstitial space. If gasoline gets in there or petroleum, then we know we got another problem. So the same with the piping. So there's monitoring of that interstitial space to make sure there's no leaks. In addition to that, there's level gauging. So when the tank is quiet, for example, they're not pumping gas, the electronics inside the tank will measure the level of the liquid to make sure it doesn't drop. And there's a rate, I think it's 1/2 gallon in an hour or something like that, or 0.5 gallons in an hour. But so not only do we have the physical measurement of the double wall, the interstitial space, but we also have monitoring of the liquid that's in the tank and monitoring of the liquid that's in the pipe. So when the system shuts down, that pipe, they measure the pressure of the liquid in the pipe, and if it drops, it calls off an alarm. And when an alarm goes off, the whole system shuts down. Anyway, so that's how we prevent leaks from underground tanks. I'll just go back. When actually, in a prior life, I used to work for Exxon Company. And the tanks we were taking out in the early 80s when I worked for them, the pipe, everything was steel with regular threaded steel connections, and they all leaked. So we don't use steel anymore. It's required that all tanks be corrosion protection, all pipes be corrosion protected, and that's what they are. All right, so besides the industry not wanting leaks, the insurance companies don't want leaks, so they've asked for all the additional standards. So anyway, so there's double wall protection, there's corrosion protection. Another form of leak would be from a spill, from filling the tank. A lot of times you would overfill the tank, or they would spill when they filled the tank. So when the truck hooks their hose up to the tank, just like on a heating oil tank at your house, it's not just the fill, there's a containment sump around the fill. So when they connect that hose, if there's a couple drops of gasoline or petroleum product on it, it's caught in the spill containment sump. And that spill containment sump can drain back into the tank. And every time it's opened, that's supposed to be checked. So that's to collect spills. And then for overfills, there's also, I mentioned there's a metering system inside the tank to measure the height of the product. if the height gets too high, an alarm goes off and to notify the delivery operator that the tank is reaching 98% capacity. In addition to that, the spill, there's a drop tube. The truck hooks up to a fill, but that fill goes all the way to the bottom of the tank, and there's a float valve in that fill. So when the delivery operator, when they're filling the tank, that float starts to close, similar to like on a toilet bowl. You know, you have the float in the top. When that liquid gets high enough, it shuts off the pipe, so no more product can get delivered. So there's two methods to prevent overfilling. So those are the main causes of spills, and that's all addressed in these tank plans that'll be provided, and that all meets the state requirements and the federal requirements. So before they operate the system, it has to be inspected as they build it, and then they have to get a permit before they can operate it from the state. So that takes care of underground. And one of your questions was about, you know, groundwater contamination and getting to the wetlands. I think, I'm assuming that's what it was about. So then the next thing is what we do on the surface. The fueling area is covered by a canopy. And, you know, it's nice to have it covered by a canopy, but it does serve a purpose. Rain doesn't hit a normal rain. It doesn't hit the fueling area. And that fueling area is concrete. And, you know, you've seen when you pull the nozzle out of your tank, maybe there's a couple of drips of gasoline that could fall. So that would fall on the concrete. And by and large, it would evaporate if it's just a couple of drops. And by not having the rain hit it, mostly, during a normal storm, the water would, any droplets would have a chance to evaporate before it ran off with the site runoff. In addition, there's a thing called a positive limiting barrier around the tanks. And if you look at the plan, you see these dark lines that go around the tank mat, the filling area. And there's a size to that. It's supposed to collect so many gallons per fueling dispenser. And that's it. So if there was a spill of say 5 gallons or so, it could run and it would collect in that limiting barriers that wrap around the islands. Right? So we've done another thing on this station, is that we're putting what we call a spill containment box. And if you look in the upper left corner of the parking lot, there's the drainage outlet. I'll get into that, but there's a box next to it. And normally we do this on larger sites, but we have a box there which has what we call booms. They're just like round absorbent pipes, so to speak. It would sit on the ground and it would prevent the gasoline from getting to that inlet. Should there be
What drawing are you looking at?
if you look at the site plan, that's 2.1. In the upper left corner of the paved parking lot,
Labeled emergency spill dike.
yeah, okay. And that note dike, that is for a note which refers to the fact that in that box, we have these things that are called booms. Now that's a typical way, if you were to have petroleum get on a pond or surface water, you would put the booms out. And so we do the same thing across the pavement. Right? Surface spills of any magnitude don't normally happen. I mean, I haven't heard of any lately, but it protects it. And then there's also absorbent pads that will be in that box. So if there's a little spill, they can pick them up. Now, okay, that's there. A couple of features on the dispenser. If a car were to hit the dispenser, because all the product, they're not pumps, because it used to be when we were kids, they would be pumps, and the pump would actually be inside the dispenser. Now the pump is in the tank, so the piping is pressurized, right? So the dispenser is really a fancy meter. But so if the dispenser were hit and knocked off the ground by a car, say, you could envision the gas flowing up in the air. Well, that doesn't happen because there's a check valve right there at the concrete island that if the dispenser is hit that check valve shuts off. So that will, they'll stop the flow. There's also two other check valves. If you notice, most dispensers have a hose that come from the top of the dispenser. So the hose doesn't hit the ground. That connection at the top of the dispenser is a check valve. So if the hose were ripped off the dispenser, that check valve stops the flow of gasoline at the top of the dispenser. The nozzle on the hose is also a check valve. So if someone leaves their nozzle in the car and drives off while the pump is still running, that would stop the flow. And there's one other feature. Most vehicles take less than 25 gallons of gasoline, and the newest dispensers now have a meter that when you pump 25 gallons, it automatically shuts off. So if you have a 12-gallon car and for whatever reason, the nozzle doesn't trip and you keep on pumping gas, it'll stop it at 25 gallons regardless, even if you were to hold it open and try to spill it on the ground. And you're all aware that these nozzles trip as there's a pressure builds up in the tank of the car. Pressure builds up, and when the pressure gets to its air pressure, that's what trips the nozzle. If you ever, when you dispense gasoline, that nozzle can trip on you. So when the car fills up, it automatically trips. So these are some of the features. Some have been around for a long time. Some are relatively new, like the 25-gallon limit. Now, say there's a spill somehow, and your engineer had recommended this too. We have a hooded catch basin in that upper left corner. So all the drainage flows to that basin. So it's a catch basin. That means there's a sump below the outlet of the pipe. Should there be water in it from the prior rain, the water would displace. Because gasoline is lighter than water, it'll sit on the top, so it has to displace the water before it gets to the outlet of the pipe. And if it's empty, well, it's got to fill up. And several gallons. I should look at that before water would leave.
Does that hooded catch basin go to the oil water separator, and then to the detention basin?
Yes.
How does he get the oil water separator?
Okay.
Yeah.
The sump, by the way, is that 3 feet? It's 5 feet. So the sump is say 4 by 4. 16. That's 16. Say it's 15 square feet by 5 feet high. That's 50, 60, 75. That's 75 cubic feet. And there's 7 gallons in a cubic feet. So that's a lot of gasoline that would be stored in that sump before it overflowed. Now, if it should get past there, there's an oil water separator, and it's very similar to a septic tank. So there's, again, 5 feet of liquid before we get to the discharge point.
Where is that shown on a drawing?
Yes.
What drawing is that shown on?
3.1.
C3.1?
3.1. In the upper right corner.
I only have C letters. I don't have a 3.1
No,
by itself. It's got a C.
No, the C precedes it.
Yeah,
C for silver.
3.1. Yeah, that shows me a detail. That doesn't show me the location on the site plan.
No, it's, if you look, I'm going to point to it. You'd have to go, I'm sorry, to see 2.2 is where it's shown. It's not shown on the site plan. The next plan.
Okay.
It's just beyond that sump that we talked about. It's a rectangle. It looks like a septic tank. So from the sump, it goes to a manhole, and it goes into the oil water separator. Now
Is there a note on the plan that says where this structure is?
Yes, on the side of the plan here, it says 3,000 gallon oil water separator.
I see it. Got it. In the detention basin embankment
Yes,
Right.
near the inlet to the storm drainage system.
right.
Okay.
So that would have to fill up before it outlets into the basin. And that would also collect any low flows, would go through there first before it would go into the basin. Now what happens is that not just a gas station, any parking lot, and it doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to because a lot of cars leaked oil. That doesn't really happen as much nowadays because the cars are built so much better. But in that first flush of rain, say it hasn't rained a while, and that first flush of rain is where you would collect oil and sand and sediment that's on the pavement, and that would go through the oil water separator, go through there first before a bigger storm would continue to go through the oil water separator, but overflow and go directly into the detention basin. And you wouldn't have a spill during a heavy rainstorm. Well, it could happen, but a spill of that magnitude will only happen from the truck. The delivery truck has several compartments, and the biggest compartment is generally 3,500 gallons. So to lose 3,000 gallons, the tubes that are built underneath that truck, one would have to break off to get that kind of spill. And I'm in this industry and I haven't heard of anything like that in a long time. So the truck that would be a problem with the truck, not with the fueling system. So anyway, so we've got the ability to hold, 3,000 gallons in the tank, another several hundred gallons, in the sump before anything would reach the detention basin. And then the detention basin would have to fill up and then overflow before it got, started heading towards the stream of the wetlands.
Question. Did you consider an alternative of taking the runoff from the store for the most part, and because before it ever gets, the runoff gets to the fueling area, and ship that off to the detention basin separately from that which would drain from the fueling area, which would reduce the pressure on the separators system that you have?
And we've done that, thank you. If you were to look at that C2.2, there's a dash line that wraps around the building. Some of the roof water will go into that pipe and go right into the detention basin. The runoff from the back of the building, the roof doesn't have to be retained. So we're just going to let that run off onto the lawn and into the wetlands. But the building drainage is separate from that area where the fueling islands are.
But it looks like you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or are those manholes?
There's
Catch
two.
basins on the
Yes,
west side of the building.
correct.
And then look, you have yard drains.
Yes, we have yard drains, and that is pumped. But because they are taking, the yard drains are taking some of the parking lot, we're running that through the system as well. And that's to really catch if a car has a leak or something like that. So that will go through the oil water separator. We're just collecting the whole parking lot.
Will the detention basin have a future maintenance plan or I'm just wondering, say, over a period of, 5, 10, 15 years, there's little amounts of oil and gasoline that are kind of getting through, the oil water separator, and it eventually gets into the detention basin. And then some of those petrochemicals would get absorbed by the sediments in that detention basin or by the vegetation along the edges of the dike. And I'm just wondering, will there be any kind of remediation or, future, maintenance plan for that to, remove contaminants or we're just relying on Mother Nature and bacteria to to
No,
break
no, no.
down
No.
the petrochemicals that get through? Yeah.
That would have to be cleaned out. And we will prepare a stormwater maintenance manual. That's a common practice. It's not necessarily required, but we'll prepare, and I'm making that a condition. We'll prepare a manual for him to check the, that sediment, you know, not the sump and then the oil water separator. He'll have to do that.
Right.
I will mention that as far as the fueling system, it's a federal and it's a state requirement that they get inspected. So the state will send inspectors every 3 years, unannounced. They will go to the site and they will check the whole fueling system to make sure the sumps are working right, that it's cleaned. Like I mentioned, the spill containment sump, there's sumps around the pumps, there's sumps at the dispensers. All that has to be cleaned and maintained. And that's inspected by the state every 3 years. One other thing I didn't mention, it came in effect last year that all service stations throughout the country have to be manned and operated by a licensed operator. So you have A, B, and C operators. So the lowest level are the guys pumping gas, which I think is a C. The A operator is the guy who's the owner, and he has to take all the tests and pass all these exams or understand the rules and regulations to operate the system. That's both the state regulations and the federal regulations. So
Thank
yes,
you.
this is not something that people forget about, but we will have the stormwater maintenance manual as part of the operation. And it could be part of his material that he has to keep on site along with all his records for the DEP's inspection. And if you want, we could file it with the town as well.
I have a couple more questions. Marla Butt speaking. Where does the runoff from the canopy go? I was looking at your detail that you have of the canopy on sheet, let's see, sheet C5.1.
5.1.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're using a ridged roof with gable end canopy here to fit the nature of the area. So there's gutters on either side of the canopy. They'll go to leaders that go into downspouts that are actually inside the columns. So they're inside the column
Okay.
of the canopy, which is standard practice, and it'll come out below the canopy. And on C2.2, it shows how it's tied into the manhole that's on the lower left corner of the building, one of those manholes that goes around the building.
You said C2.2?
Yeah, C2.2 shows the
Shows the
line.
detail of the connection?
Yes. On the lower end of the canopy, you see the rectangles there represent the dispensers. And just below that is a line running across the page and then heads on a diagonal towards the building. That's the drain pipe.
Okay. So that then connects to the separator system ultimately, even though that's clean water.
Yes. Well, what happens is that during a heavy storm, the flow going in that direction would actually overflow. The separator could only take so much water. So the heavier storms, it bypasses and goes right into the detention system. The idea is, and this is how a lot of storm filters and other manufactured devices that take away suspended solids do. They take the low flush, the first flush of water off the pavement will go through them. Heavier storms will exceed the capacity to go in through the oil water separator, so it'll just bypass the oil water separator, go right into the detention basin. So it doesn't circumvent the system unless you happen to have, unless a truck comes on the site and breaks a pipe and and it flows during a heavy rainstorm. So that's
The reason why I'm asking this is I have seen canopies that where their downspouts have failed. And rather than going into a drainage system underground, they end up spilling over the canopy and onto the ground near the limiting barrier. So my question on the limiting barrier is how far does the canopy extend past the limiting barrier? You don't have that on the detail for the canopy as to where the limiting barrier is in relation to the canopy.
there's a heavy dashed line, which it indicates the extent of the canopy. And it's outside, it's beyond the limiting barrier. And then you have the gutters beyond that. So it's a foot beyond. So if the water were to spill over, it'd be a foot beyond the limiting barrier, 9 inches, something along those lines.
So it's less than a foot.
Yes, it's less than.
Yes. Okay, so in heavy rain with the wind blowing, we could easily have that limiting barrier compromised.
Yes.
Was there any consideration of extending the canopy beyond that small amount of distance beyond the limiting barrier so that the limiting barrier is protected more?
Well, two things. One, I think what we could do is we could move the limiting barrier in so the canopy doesn't have to get bigger. And I just say that from a zoning standpoint because, you know, they don't want the canopy to be too big. Let me just see what the size is. Yeah, it's 24 feet wide now. We could do that. But also, the idea of the limiting barriers to catch a leak. Should someone do something stupid at the dispenser and drop the nozzle while it's still flowing, and cause,
Or knock over a gas can that they're filling at the pump?
yeah, or something like that. But if yeah, well, that's the only time that would happen, right? But
The reason why I'm asking this is I've gotten out of a car under the canopy. The filler hose is on the passenger side, and when I get out, I'm getting rain on my head, and I'm standing on the limiting barrier. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
okay, I'll just look at it. I can't answer. We're not finishing tonight, so I'll take a look at it.
I'm just trying to make sure that if there is spill that gets into the limiting barrier, that has an opportunity to evaporate before it ends up going into the water system.
Right, and not only should it evaporate, that's why we have those absorbent pads. They should come out there and pat it down.
Who maintains that?
The operator. And besides, forgetting about what we're talking about right now, that's part of the rules in the state of Connecticut and the federal government about maintaining the work site. So that's all part of the regulations of operating a service station, in addition to what we're doing.
Yeah, it would be useful to see if that canopy can be extended somehow so that it's more than a foot, more than 9 inches past the limiting barrier. I've seen that as being a problem in some gas stations where the rainwater is actually getting into the limiting barrier.
Well, I
because of
think
the way
that's
the
gonna,
rain's coming down.
I'm sorry, I think that's gonna happen just from the regular runoff from the site. But let me just get some more information on that.
And the last question, or close to the last question I have, is on the detention basin. Have you designed that as a wet basin so that it'll have wetlands vegetation in the bottom, or are you anticipating that of being a dry basin
No,
for stormwater management purposes?
we have, it's a foot of water, so it'll infiltrate. So the outlet is a foot above the bottom of the basin. So the water will infiltrate. Mm-hmm. Now, what we had to do is, there's 2 test pits right in the detention basin. In one, the groundwater was down from the existing surface, like down about 3 feet or 2 feet. And in the other one, it was down like 6 feet. I don't recall exactly. But they're like 30 feet apart and the groundwater was at different elevations. So we had to do, the requirement is that you can't have evidence of high groundwater within 3 feet of the bottom of the detention basin. So we raised the basin up. But anyway, it's meant to infiltrate.
Where was that? Where was that requirement? Where did that come from?
Stormwater regulations.
You mean the Stormwater Management Manual?
Yes. It's
'Cause
different.
I thought
elevation.
that management manual recommended wet basins as being a better stormwater quality renovator.
No. That's not,
Just a question.
that's a different topic. Yes. This, that just has to do with what's below the ground. So no, the bottom foot of the basin is intended to infiltrate. So that's what it is.
I'll have to hold any further comment on this until I have a chance to review the plans in relation to the questions that I asked before.
The other members have any questions at this time?
No.
Okay.
Bill, I don't have any.
I have to hold back. I probably have some, but I haven't had time to look at these yet.
Okay. Marla, help me out here. Should we make a motion to continue this to next month's meeting, or can we just let it ride as a submittal and we're reviewing it?
That's correct. Because under the governor's executive order, there was 90-day extension of all timelines
Okay.
of total. So there's no requirement yet. So I would suggest that if any commissioner has questions or concerns, that they forward them to Tina, so Tina can forward them within the next 2 weeks, so they could forward them to the applicant for response by the next meeting,
Right.
so that we have a chance to see what the questions were, see what the answer is, to make sure we don't have any follow-ups.
Right, I agree. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For coming and explaining things to us. We'll,
Yeah, that was
we'll
helpful.
come back to this again next month.
Okay. So that's, well, whatever, the first Monday of the month, right?
We'll put this on the agenda for the first Monday of June. I mean, July.
Well, it'll be July, July
Well, it'll be-
13th is the next meeting,
Okay.
so.
Well, none of us are going away for 4th of July. So.
Yeah, that's right. And the Jamboree has been canceled. Oh, I'm gonna miss the Jamboree.
Okay.
Well, that'll give us plenty of time to get the information in. Any changes? I do have several large plans. If anybody wants large sets, I can get them out to you.
And what we'll do is we have the letter from your engineer and the other comments that we have so far. We could just put a written response to them. So and we'll try to get that in the next week. Maybe it'll help assist in the review of the plans.
Yeah, I might like to see those things.
Okay, I'll send you. Yep.
I don't know if anybody wanted to share that, but this is a lot of information to process.
Very good.
All right.
All right.
Okay. I'll
Very
sign
good.
off. Thank you very much.
So we thank you. Yeah, we will move on to new applications. Okay, so we have new application 05-20-10, Pratt, Joshua Pratt, 9 Bassett Hill Road, restoring pond.
Is Josh there?
Is Josh on or a representative? Okay.
Oh, I sent him the agenda. He had a permit for this. I don't know where he is, but I can just give you kind of an overview. He did have a permit to restore this pond that expired a couple of years ago, so he is just reapplying. He already applied for a wetland sign off for some landscaping out of the wetlands and just some maintenance work around the pond. And so now he would like to get busy trying to restore that pond to the way that it was. So let me just try to call him and see if he's planning on signing in here. I thought his application was pretty detailed.
Tina, do you have the application of the permit number that he was originally issued under?
Yep. So here's the picture of what it looked like at the time. He's trying to get it back to looking like this.
Yep.
That helps you. And the original permit was issued back November 28th, 09. And the number, is that what you want, the permit number?
Yes. Yes.
090923.
So 090923?
Yep, and it was dredging to restore fire pond.
And I remember it was a couple of years ago, or maybe it was longer than 2 years ago, they did do some bulldozing and cleaned it out, and then there was a lot of rain, and there was quite a bit of silty water that went out of that drainage into that catch basin and under the road and into, was it Taylor Brook? I can't remember the name of the, is it Masscraft at that point?
Yes, yep.
But across the street is the brook that, you know, it goes
Yeah,
down,
he's not-
flows down near Quasset Road, and then it joins with the outflow from Quasset Lake and then continues on down. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not proposing any work in that location where that pipe was.
Right. Okay.
Is this pond subtended by a dam, Tina? Do you know?
Yes. Yeah, it says old, let's see. I've got so much paperwork here. It does look like there might, it says old dam location on some old paperwork here from the original application.
Maybe we need to check to see if it's registered, if the old dam is registered and what the hazard classification was identified. Probably an A if it's very low level, but it depends on what's immediately downstream. I'm not familiar with the pond, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a low level, Marla. It's mostly a dug out pond, but a little bit of a raised area around the southeastern side of it, you know, which empties into that little box culvert that goes under the road.
Hello, it's
Yeah.
Tina, how are you? Good, so we're in the middle of the wetlands meeting and they're talking about your application. So I'm gonna put you on speakerphone, okay? So you can answer any questions. All right, I got Josh on speakerphone for you guys if you have any questions.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Josh. So Josh, are you gonna be
much-
doing any
this
more
is-
digging
Oh.
and bulldozing?
Okay, go
Josh,
ahead,
this is
Mark.
Yeah, this is Mark Parker. I'm just wondering, is the work going to entail doing some more dredging and digging out of the pond and stirring up some more mud and silt, or is it now just a matter of kind of finishing things off? And yeah, what are you planning?
So there is going to be some digging in the back end of the pond. Unfortunately, when I took out the application the first time, due to personal issues, that we had the dozer, everything pushed away, and it wasn't moved away, and then we couldn't get it fixed. So some of that stuff went back in, but the main, I guess, dredge, you could say, would be in the back panhandle section of the pond, and it's going to be more clay than anything. I don't know if anyone remembers, but the pond used to be around 10 feet deep, maybe even a little bit more, all the way through. I'm looking just to get the back end back to the original depth so I can actually have a better population of the original like fish, such as trout, because they won't live at all there anymore. I actually stocked some in there 2 years ago, and they all died because it got too hot.
Yeah, you need to go with brown trout because they can take warmer temperatures and lower dissolved oxygen than the brookies and the rainbows.
Yeah, it was it was sad. I was hoping it was gonna work, but like I said, we had it almost, I don't know, 8 feet or so when it was originally dug. I don't know, say 4 years ago, or whenever I had all the machines in there, and then it kind of went back in a little bit because that D5 dozer we had the last day, it got stuck, and when a local farm came, pulled it out, and then that sent away, and then my construction guy left, so I wasn't able to continue on with the project.
So Marla Butt speaking. Are you intending to develop a forebay at the inlet to the pond for purposes of future cleaning? I'm looking at Exhibit E. It says silt pond, and then it's got like a stone dike. And then that goes to removing the clay and silt. Then you have that little bridge, and then you have the deeper area to where it goes to the outlet. So are you? Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The outlet of the pond is the adjustable height. That's already in there. That's not being touched. The inlet of the pond at the top of the panhandle section that is labeled silt pond, that we are looking to not dig necessarily, but fix the rock dam, I should say, there. So that way that it can easily be cleaned out. So if there's a silt pond, anything that comes in from the existing swamp will be caught in that pond and could be actually even hand dug if needed out, so it doesn't go into the main section. That way there's, 20 years from now, there's no need for any kind of heavy machinery or anything like that to ever touch the pond again, and it shouldn't fill. That was the original problem when it was dug back in the 60s. That silt pond never caught the silt like it was supposed to. So it filled up, as you could tell in some of those pictures, it filled up a lot over the years.
Does that stone dike exist now, or is it already in place?
Yes, it is, except for some of the big rocks have fallen over. So I actually need to move those rocks over, put them where they should be, and then fix that so it fills up.
Are you planning to clean that out at this time? The silt pond, what I would call a forebay?
If anything comes out of there, it might be like a foot of product. It's probably, once it's allowed to fill up, it's probably close to 4 to 5 feet deep as it is. Because I can go in there and stand in there, and it's probably up to my shoulders as far as where the water level would be when it's full.
What kind of equipment are you going to use?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What kind of equipment are you going to use to excavate?
There'll be probably a 320 or a 330 dozer, not like that was in there before. That was not the right choice of equipment. We had a long reach excavator in there before that was just large and obnoxious, and those aren't meant for dig power. They're just meant for scraping the surface. So we're just going to bring in either a 320 or 330 dozer. Excavator, and that will dig, and it should make quick work. So it's not there for a long period of time at all.
How are you going to dewater the sediments you take out?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How are you going to dewater the sediments that you take out? Because you're going to be going through water, correct? Pulling up soup, more or less, or very soft sediments. How are you going to control them from washing back in?
Right now is lower, so all that silt that's being taken out from the upper area is solid at the moment. It's not covered in water, and then everything else is clay underneath that, so the clay won't disintegrate at all when you scrape it. It's literally hard like clay, like you would think of clay. So once you dig that, it's just going to come out in chunks.
How are you going to handle it once you get it on dry land? How are you going to protect the clay from not washing in when it rains?
If need be, we would use a silt fence, but we're going to be feathering. The clay is going to get feathered out into the yard, and then the silt will be on top of that for any kind of low spots. But it's not going to be like a big mound of dirt. It's not going to look like the old sand pit or anything like that. So it's not. It shouldn't be flowing back in like you're asking about.
Josh, this is Mark Parker again.
Yep.
So what I understand you're saying is you'll be taking the clay and silt and whatever out of that area, and then will you be spreading it out on the land that you have, or will you be trucking it off site, removing it to somewhere else?
No, we're not going to be removing it, because a lot of anything that's usable as far as which will grow vegetation wise, so the silt, they said it's already dry at the moment in the panhandle section of the pond because the water is slightly lower. That's going to be taken out, and it's going to be shoveled into or feathered out to the low areas of the yard. You're familiar with the property, so in the back of the barn, that's pretty much all going to get pushed up towards the deck to make a nice property instead of it's really sloped now. It kind of has like a slope and a flat spot and then a heavy slope towards the pond. We're trying to make that so it's easily maintainable, so that you can mow it. So we're going to try to distribute everything throughout so that we're not carting it around, we're not really moving it, and I don't have to bring in any other material to fill any low spots.
So Marla Butt speaking, so you're not planning on doing any excavation in the main part of the pond, correct?
There would only be that one little, so if I'm not sure what diagram it is, I apologize, so I don't have it in front of me. But if you're looking at the diagram to the right, the main section of the pond, we just want to take some of it, maybe like an 8 to 10 foot radius, and make that a little deeper. We'll use some of that clay that will move over to the base of the bridge. That would be it in that area. There'd be nothing else really taken out except for the side scratched, because I don't want to make a big mess. I don't want it. This last time it looked awful. I want to try to make something that's short and sweet per se, get in there for a couple days and make this look nice again. I don't want to be an eyesore for Woodstock. I want it to be a nice looking pond like it used to. So no, just, it would be that small, that 8 to 10 foot radius there. In the main part. Other than that, there wouldn't be any excavating in that area.
This is a question actually for Mark. Do you think this might be a project that might do well with a turbidity curtain as the primary sediment control in the body of the water body? Because it has a controlled outlet at one end, and he's not planning on touching other portions. It might be deep enough to allow for a turbidity curtain, and that would, if he's spreading clay-like materials and silt-like materials that could drain back into the water body, that would help to reduce the spread of turbid water leaving the site.
Right.
Turbidity curtains are identified in the ENS guidelines. If you look at the 2002 Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control that are online at DEP, you can download it and look at turbidity curtain and see if that might be something that might be of value to you while the site gets stabilized. If you've never seen a turbidity curtain, then you're not going to understand how it works. It's a curtain that's actually in the standing water, and it keeps the turbid water more or less segregated from the clean water, the rest of the clean water. And any excess water tends to go either through the curtain or underneath along the bottom, rather than going on the surface and being released downstream.
That's, I mean, I don't mean to cut in. That's almost what would be occurring when we put the, where you can see the bridge is going to be in, that whole section needs to be raised up. So if we took clay from the far end where it's dry and moved it there, you could almost raise it would act somewhat like you're saying now. It would stop the muddy water that's being messed with from the far end getting into the main end.
I still think if you're working with silts and clays, they will go into solution, even though they're solid now. Once they get hydrated, they'll have and it doesn't take much to create a really turbid looking condition with silts and clays. The volume is very, very small, but it has a big effect on turbidity. Well, that was just a thought.
Okay.
We're only accepting this application at this time, aren't we,
Yeah.
Mark? Yes. We're
Yes,
just
we're receiving this.
accepting this application
We're
at this time.
receiving it for consideration, yeah.
Yes.
You know how much
So
cubic
Joshua-
yardage you'll actually be removing from the water body?
I'm sorry, what was that? How much, what I'm going to be moving?
Cubic yardage. How much cubic yardage do you expect to be removing from the area to be ponded?
It was
have
listed in
idea?
the exhibit. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I want to say it was around 50 of clay and 30 of silt, or somewhere around that.
I got things in square feet on Exhibit C. Let's see where it was. That'll give us an idea of what the size of the excavation is. We know how much cubic yards you're anticipating to be moved. Here you go. Proposed item 4. Proposed clean edge of pond where silt runoff to return to the pond after initial repair with shortcut. No digging is proposed in this area. Only a removal of 30 yards of silt by scratching the edge. So that's 30 there.
Yeah.
And then above that, on the side, you got 15 yards. Is that correct? Is that where you were referring to?
I would have to pull up. I just pulled into my residence, so I have to pull that up.
That's okay. We can talk about that later. We don't have to do it tonight.
Okay.
Mark, you think it's appropriate to move to accept the application 05-2010? for consideration
do.
at next month's meeting?
Yes.
I so move it.
Second by Bill.
Motion's been made by Marla Butts, seconded by Bill Ruinski to accept the application as presented for consideration on next month's agenda. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None? So accepted. Okay, Josh, if we have any more questions, we'll get them out to you, and we'll take a look at this again next month.
Okay, thank you guys. And like I said, if anyone needs to come or would like to come and see in person what it is, you're welcome to come and check it out. So that way you get a better feel, other than
Right.
just a sketch on paper.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you.
You're welcome.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right, thank you for this discussion. Very good. Administrative business, other. Wetlands Agent Activity Report. Tina, you got something on an update on 119 Crooked Trail Extension?
Yes, Stuart and I did visit the site to take a look at the damage. There was a report that went in your packets that Stuart was kind enough to put together for us about the conditions that day and what we viewed. And basically, they're just asking for us to support, send a letter to the DEP, just, requesting further testing to be done by the DEP, just that we feel that it would be necessary to do that on the site.
All right.
I'm on the other side of Tom, Gary Wolf, and I have several trees now that have no leaves. I don't know if you saw our side, but
We did, we walked on
we're
your
in the
side.
same boat.
Right.
It's unbelievable, and we would really appreciate any pressure that you guys can put on to. I don't know what you do, but it's really bad.
Tina, this is Bill. Tina, did you observe any erosion conditions, the slope going to the water?
Let me just pull the report out. Hold on a second. I took pictures.
Like one of our trees is probably 35, 40 feet and it's dead. Another one's not that much smaller and it's dead. And Tom has a bunch on his.
Were they oak trees or were they maples?
I have oak and I think it's a maple.
Mostly oaks on my side, one maple. The erosion into the lake is to the point where I don't know how many yards of sand she brought in there, but I've built about a 5-foot little rock jetty out into the lake because the sand from her beach is washing into the lake and coming around my stone wall. It was coming about 30 feet around my stone wall and basically raising the grade where it was above the water line. So I built this little 5-foot little loose rock jetty to try to keep the sand from migrating around the corner of the property onto my property. But there is substantial runoff there.
Yeah, we did note that there was some soil runoff. Stuart, you were there. Are you comfortable recommending? There you are. Are you comfortable, sending out a letter recommending that further testing be done on site?
One of the questions I had would be, what was the date of the first testing sequence? I don't remember.
I believe it was in, let me see if I can dig it out of my file here quickly. I believe it was in the winter. I would, if I had to guess, I would say probably January timeframe. Let me see if I can get to it. I thought that the vote was already taken last meeting to write that letter, and that the going to the site was just kind of a an additional look-see.
Yeah, I think that's true, Tom. I guess the issue on the table right now is to what the letter contents will consist of.
Yeah.
I think it was agreed that we will write a letter, that the board will write a letter, the agency will write a letter, but what goes in it and how it's written is pretty important.
This is Bill. My intention of recommending that site visit was to observe the erosion and to see if it's significant enough that some remediation action should be taken to further.
Well, somehow she got her driveways up just virtually all the way down into the to the lake. I don't know. I didn't think you'd get that approved.
February 19th were the water test, was when the samples were taken.
I mean, would it make sense to do another round of testing in the water?
That was done by the Witches Woods Lake Association. 4 tests were taken along the lake, and the results, I believe you guys have a copy of the results of that.
Yeah.
And the synopsis that was written by what's her name? Let's see. Let me get to that.
Yeah, Jean Pillow.
Jean Pillow. Yeah.
Right.
What's on my mind is the process of attenuation. Try to measure the process of attenuation. Since she's stopped applying the copper sulfate, and the tests were done in February, it's now June. It's almost 4 months. So, you know, when would it, I mean, I'm not the scientist here, but when would it be appropriate to take another test to measure that process of attenuation? You know, we have succeeded in the fact that she has stopped applying this, and that's a positive note. Now the question would be more of how to address the damage that's been done. So I think those are separate issues. And if it's to Bill's point, if it's I'm just talking about the copper sulfate, but if we're looking at the erosion, yeah, it does exist, but I think it can be addressed with some you know, topographical devices.
I mean, keep in mind, this homeowner does not like grass. She is teaching that those soils are not growing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, my driveway currently on my property is growing grass. Her driveways grow nothing. Her property, bare soils, are growing nothing. So I don't really know at this point. I mean, all we're looking for is for you guys to go to write a letter to the DEEP suggesting that you feel that the soils should be tested to see what kind of levels of copper sulfate exist in the soils. There's enough copper sulfate existing in the soils to cause nothing to grow. I had an arborist. I had an arborist out there who looked and basically talked about how the root systems of trees will intermingle with other, because I was asking, how does this maple die that's 15 feet away from the property line? And basically the trees start sharing root systems. And that's probably how Gary's maple that's 20 feet inside his property is dead. Seems maples are quicker to go than oaks are. And the oak that's on his property, that's 2/3 dead and on its way out. So in my estimation, if nothing grows on the property, why wouldn't this board think it was a good idea to try to get the DEEP to follow through and test those soils?
And the other concern, obviously, is the water, kids and stuff. She's rented her house to 5 little kids next door for a month, and they've stopped swimming in the pool, in the lake now. Like I've noticed, somebody's told them about that. I don't know whether it's safe. I got grandkids.
It's sand too.
Everything that's been shown about copper in the water does not show it to be hazardous to humans or to eating the fish, but it does show it at 17 times higher the level on that last test. And that last test, mind you, was runoff water on top of the frozen lake. The lake was frozen. There was about 4 or 5 inches of water when John took the samples. So that was pretty much straight up runoff, sitting on top of the ice of the lake. That was 17 times more copper contaminated than the highest level of toxicity to fish and wildlife in the lake. I'm just kind of at a loss as to why a board that is in place to protect wetlands would not adamantly be going to the DEEP and saying, we need to know what's in this soil to know how much longer it's going to keep running off into the lake. I'm kind of at a loss for that, honestly.
Oh,
Marla Butt speaking. I do think there's enough information to send a letter to DEP at this point in time. I don't have Tina's photographs. That might be helpful. But I do think a request can be made, and we talked about it at last meeting. And so I will, if Tina, if you want some assistance in drafting that correspondence, I can try to do something for you in the next couple of weeks.
Just
yeah,
to
I
give you
can
guys
draft something.
I'm
I
sorry.
can draft it and send it out to everyone to add their own thoughts. Anything you want to add in there, I can. Who do we want this to go to specifically? This Senek, was it Senek was the guy's last name, or?
I would say that the best person to go to would be Ray Freegon.
Ray
Freegon, he's remediation.
Raymond.
Unless they've moved him.
Raymond.freegon@ct.gov.
Okay.
I actually talked to him last week, as well as the pesticides guy. From what the DEP tells me, they are trying to get all their different agencies together between pesticides, and Ray Freegon is in remediation, and they're trying to all get together. And Ray Freegon said he wanted to come out and see the site as well. He hasn't contacted me yet as to when he wants to do that. But sounds like they're trying to get together to come up to some kind of consensus as to where it should go from here. And I don't think they need much of a nudge to get them to the point where they need to test soil samples.
Okay.
This is Bill. Does anybody know the manufacturer of the copper sulfate that's used?
I've got the, I may have let me see. Let me go through my notes here again.
I thought there was some attempt to find out the amounts and that they weren't going to divulge. what those-
They're working on that. They have a case opened against the supplier, who is a company out of Long Island.
Who
And
is
they have
that?
that's what I'm trying to look through my notes and find right now.
No,
They
but
also have
who has the case against them?
the DEP.
Okay.
And they also have a case against the property owner at 119. And their major goal is to try to find out how much was applied, how much was purchased.
So why, so the DEP is already actively engaged in a process with the copper sulfate supplier.
They're trying to, but they're out of state. They've got the New York DEP involved, and they've got the EPA involved as well. But until the soils are sampled, nobody really knows what's going on here.
I'm just thinking that, you know, again, I suggest another water test as being, you know, supportive in our process, because time is a
Marla
factor,
Butt speaking.
and the attenuation process is a real thing.
Marla Butt
So
speaking.
if we sample, I'm sorry,
Because we-
Mark.
It's okay, go ahead. I can wait.
So if we go over there and we sample stationary water and it samples cleaner than what it sampled before, and then the next time it rains and there's a ton of runoff that pushes stuff down the lake, does that mean it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be cleaner when there's no runoff taking place?
We'll take a test, right? It depends on when you take the test. As I say, this would be where science comes in, but the you know, the suggestion I have in mind is just to try to avoid a very long, drawn out legal battle and just go for what we can get quickly and help make judgment.
Can I make a suggestion that you ask for both, and then the water test is easy because they can ask the lake, and then we'll see how the state does with the rest.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process, and therefore it should be measured in that process. Because now we're only looking at data from February, and it's June. We should update that data.
So ask for both.
Yeah.
But again, all we're asking is for you guys who are the guardians of the wetlands of this area to write a letter to the DEP to ask them to do a water solubility test of the soils. We're not asking you guys to enter into any kind of a lawsuit or enter into any kind of a big, long, drawn-out process. We're asking you guys to write one letter, because the Wetlands Commission, I can't imagine the Wetlands Commission not having concern over this and still wanting to continue and put more obstacles in the way of trying to get the definitive answer, which is a water solubility test of the soils.
We talked about that a couple of months ago, Tom, and what our role is not as an enforcement, in my view, and is the same as your view. And what we've done is write a letter to tell the owner to cease and desist, which is what she did. And we can, based on more information, we can advise and suggest, but we can't say, jump up and down and without really knowing what we're talking about. So we've got to have more information. We came up with the conclusion after the last meeting that we would be happy to write a letter, because nobody is happy about this situation. The question, I think, is on the table is to what is going in that letter. And I don't think that we should commit to anything until we have more information. That's my view.
Marla Butt speaking. I disagree with you, Stuart. I think we could probably send a letter to DEP and ask them, tell them what our concerns are, what we've been told, and ask them what their intentions are, what they plan to do to address the situation, and what direction they're going in with respect to sampling the soils. I think sampling the water isn't going to give you the whole picture. The problem that they're going to have is that they'll have to get a search warrant, most likely, to get onto the property. That's
Right.
DEP's problem, not
Right.
ours.
Exactly.
I think we can ask them to do that. And from that, DEP, judging by whatever resources they have, will make the decision as to whether or not they'll accede to our request. But I think we can make that request at this point in time. There's enough information to say there's a potential problem out there, and they have some information that they've taken themselves, some sampling that they've done. So I do think that we should find out more what they are planning. They might not tell us, because if they're in an enforcement proceeding, they're not going to necessarily disclose what they're going to do. But we certainly can ask them to do something. And you're right, what we say in the letter makes a difference. And that's why I think if Tina drafts something and it's shared to the commissioners, we each give some feedback and then can decide if we can come to a consensus of what she says without a problem, then I think it can move forward and we can judge it at the next meeting.
And that's all I'm saying, is that I think we need more information, and that's what the letter is asking. We need more information. We need more actively engaged consideration from the DEP. They have put it on the side. We'd like to know why and just get some resolution on that. Then they're going to get into a legal process about the obtaining the search warrant and so on, and that's going to change everything of its own. But all we can do is ask.
That's their problem.
That's all we can do is ask for the information.
Right, that's
the
their problem.
Yeah.
Right, we're not doing their enforcement action. We're not doing the enforcement action. They are. We're just
Correct.
asking them to take an action to
Can we
assist
take a
in
vote?
getting the situation resolved.
Can we take a vote on this? And it's getting like drawn out here too far for me. Can we take a vote if we want to send the letter? And
We are. Victor,
I
think we
agree
already
with
did
Marla.
that
Let's
last
send
meeting.
the letter.
Let's carry out what we already decided.
I know, we keep
Well,
going over it.
my apology wasn't, yeah. My apologies, I wasn't there at the meeting, but I'm looking at the minutes of the meeting, and it says that you guys passed a motion to send the letter. So we need to
So
carry
let's
that.
send the letter
motion out.
and let's put this to bed. This is getting a little crazy for me.
Okay, I will draft the letter
I
this
agree.
week.
I'm going
and
to
get the
second
form.
Marla's motion. Whatever she said.
I didn't make a motion.
When you said to send the letter, I'll get more information. Let's do it. We're talking way too much about this. Let's do it.
All right.
I don't think you should jump in like that, Victor. I mean, this is not an easy situation. I'm just saying my piece, and we have to do due diligence. I don't want to get impatient with something like this.
Well, we're not
And
asking them. We're just asking them
We
to.
said last month we were going to send a letter, or 2 months ago. That's not a
Right.
problem. But I having gone out there and saw what I saw, I've got my own opinion, and I think on this venue, it's my right to speak out.
Yes, you do.
Thanks very much. You guys
We're
have a good
repeating.
night.
We're saying the same thing over and over again. Let's either let's do it or let's do it. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
All right, yep. Mark Parker, Chairman here speaking. So I am instructing Tina LaJoy, our wetlands agent, to start working on drafting the letter. And next week, Tina, if you would run it by me and Marla, well, send a draft to the rest of the commission and just ask for our input, and we'll do some last minute editing and so that we can get it off to the DEP in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Tina, Tom Gata, I believe all the pictures that I sent in to you, Tina, do show a lot of the erosion that's there as well, if you wanted to refer to those.
Yeah, there was definitely erosion. We did indicate that in our report, so
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
And Tina, I'll recommend that we address that letter to Ray Pregon at the DEP.
All
'Cause
right.
I think he's taking the lead on it from the DEP side, so.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Wetlands activity report?
Well, you saw my wetlands activity report. We do have an application that is for an Eagle Scout project over at Roseland Park. And it's basically, remember he came in about that boat area last fall? That they were removing that boat cement area and there was a deck on top of that. They're replacing a deck there. So I went out to the site. They're trying to use the same footings that are there. And it's going to be the same size that they had. So it's something that I felt comfortable signing off on, being they're not like digging in that area or anything. They're utilizing the same. I just want you to know ahead of time in case somebody tells you, oh, there's work going on over at Roseland Park, and you know, so there will be, I'm going to sign off on it, and I will put an ad, of course, in the paper indicating that. I didn't know if you had any questions on the report that I sent you. There have been a lot of applications.
Is that application in the report?
I have not logged it into the report. I don't believe it just
Okay.
came in here. I've got to work on this.
So you're taking it as they're just doing work in the upland review area?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember if that deck was over water or not.
It is not going to be over water. What they have there, it is not over the water. I
It
can
used to
show
be
you the
over
picture.
water. When I was a kid, we could row the rowboats right in underneath that platform, and they stored the boats there. But over the years, it filled in, and the Phragmites grew, and more silt built up, and so that now it's pretty much all filled in underneath there.
This is Bill.
Yeah, I have a picture of it.
This is Bill. He had when it started collapsing, he had the rest of it knocked down, and then he did fill in some sand there. So it's is pretty much filled with sand now, and there's no water, surface water there anymore.
Yeah.
That was part of the motivation for the complaint because of the fill without a permit.
Can you guys see that? It's all muddy
Yep.
in there, and the footings, and let's see if there's a better picture. That kind of gives you.
And we had Rick here a little while ago. He stated that he did the immediate action because we were kind of in between wetlands agents and, it was just nobody that he could turn anything around with at the town hall at the time. And so he just took action for safety's sake.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any bills that I need to sign off on that you guys need to send me?
Christine is handling that. I don't believe there
Yeah.
was anything in this
Yeah.
packet. I'm sure there will be for next meeting.
Yeah.
Just
Any
as
other
an aside, the Town of Thompson Wetlands Commission got a bill from Stonebridge Press for a legal notice from the Woodstock Villager, or the that was actually belonged in Woodstock. So we sent the bill back to Stonebridge Press and told them to send it to the town of Woodstock. That was, I can't remember the name on the plan, on the approval, but it was $44 and change for a legal notice for wetlands agent approval.
Oh, okay.
So I know that one's coming to you eventually.
Why didn't you guys pay it?
I'm not gonna pay for your legal notices.
We're in the same watershed.
Yeah.
The Quinnebog River watershed.
Right, no one would notice.
All right, okay. Any other business? Any citizens' comments?
Yeah, the bylaws that were sent were correct. Dated
Correct.
revised 6/17/19. No, that's not it. What you sent?
Well, Christine just printed out the last ones. Now she's going to make the change that you had requested. Because remember, last month you didn't have the right bylaws.
Yeah, but we
Did you-
approved them, didn't we? We did
did she-
approve them. So
Didn't approve the change in meeting date.
Did she make the change in it though? Hold on.
Not yet.
Oh, she
no,
didn't. Okay.
no. That's on page
All right.
3. So, and the revision date should be updated too. So,
Right. All right, I'll have her do that. Okay, that's it.
question, we lost Stuart.
Yeah.
He hung up on us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that we've upset him. Well, didn't mean to
I
upset
hope I
him.
didn't upset him, but it's just, I remember this from months ago, the same conversations. It's just, we gotta do something.
Yeah, I mean, when we were there, though, the trees, some of the damage that you see is from, you know, the caterpillars, and there's some other things going on there too. It was,
Well, he felt
I mean,
it wasn't
I
all
hope I didn't
the
upset
soil.
him.
there certainly was, you know, there was some erosion. I mean, they don't have any grass on that property at all, so it's not, it didn't look great, but, you know, and it looks like some trees are dying on the side, but seems like things were also coming back too, so it was hard to completely relate it to the copper sulfate, but I'm not an expert, so just,
Neither am I. And the bigger concern that I would have is migration to drinking water wells. And that really isn't our concern per se, but we've come into possession of certain information that we probably should transmit that to them, that they probably should take a look at what the contamination levels are in the soil and whether or not it could migrate into wells. That's just a kind of like a health issue to me. It's related to wetlands and watercourses, but it's not technically our job, but it is theirs. So I think sending that letter makes sense depending on how it's written.
mhm.
All righty then.
Yeah, bye-bye. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made by Marla Butts and seconded by Victor Peabody to adjourn.
There it is.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
What
So
time?
moved. At
What time am I?
8:48.
Okay.
That's what it's